Most change really starts with a plan. It starts with that moment of unease and discomfort when you notice something is wrong and you know you can't turn away. I'm Saskia Falcon. Welcome to the Odds in Our Favor, a News 24 Good News podcast brought to you by Old Mutual Wealth, helping you grow, protect, and preserve what matters. This is a podcast featuring ordinary South Africans who have stopped waiting for systems to work and have started fixing things themselves. For many rural communities in South Africa, the struggle is a daily reality, from hunger and land insecurity to the fight for clean water. Today, we're joined by Lungisa Huna, Director of TCOE, the Trust for Community Outreach and Education. It's an organization that has been at the forefront of these challenges for decades. TCOE is dedicated to supporting rural communities, championing food security, land reform, and food sovereignty. In this episode, we'll explore how they're driving lasting change and what it truly takes to build trust, resilience in communities facing such complex struggles. Lungisa, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Saskia, for having me.
Have you always been involved in community activism?
I can say yes, because I grew up and I was born in a family that was very involved politically. Both my father and mother and brother later on. So it's been part of my upbringing to be part of something bigger than myself and to be socially conscious of what happens around me and in my world.
Where did you grow up?
I actually grew up in Cape Town. I myself was born in a shack, and I grew up in the sandy hills of Kraaifontein, now known as KTC. So I knew poverty at first hand and the struggle that my parents had to face with 6 children that they had to fend for.
And your passion for rural women, where did that come from?
When I was 12 years old, I actually approached my parents and I said I wanted to go and live in the Eastern Cape with an uncle who was staying there. And that's when I got really introduced into the life in the Eastern Cape, in the villages. And I attended my high school in the villages there, walking long distances to get to school, crossing rivers. And that's my introduction in the harsh reality of rural life.
And at that young age, what was it that stood out for you in terms of the differences between life for women in a rural space versus life for women in an urban environment?
I think the hardships that women face daily, the toil that they spend a lot of time working all day long. I used to hate fetching wood. This was one of the things they had to do, to go and look for wood up the hill. And I was terrified of snakes. So I always feared that, and I hated going to fetch the water from the river. So watching them struggle in that sense that they have to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, to go and get wood, firewood, or to get water was, for me, the biggest challenge ever.
Now, Trust for Community Outreach and Education, TCOE, it was started in 1983, and it's dedicated to rural communities, focusing on food insecurity, land reform, food sovereignty, and of course believing that the struggle for land, food, and water are all part of the same struggle. So just tell us a little bit about how long you've been a part of TCOE and what was it that attracted you to the work that they were doing?
I've been with TCOE now for just over 10 years. I had partnered with TCOE when I was working with another organization, when there was a struggle and a strike in Robertson. So we supported them because the staff or the workers were chased away and they had no food at all. From the organization I used to work with, we partnered to give them food parcels so that they can fend for their families while they were on strike. So my attraction to the work of TCOE is in relation to the fact that it's about humanity. It's about serving humanity.
Then, Gisa, for those listening that might not understand the work that TCOE does and the problem it's trying to solve, can you share with us a little bit about that?
So this TCOE is an organization that, as you said, it's a rural organization. Rural people are often isolated, marginalized, and therefore vulnerable. Our work focuses primarily on dealing with issue of land, access to land with water. Oftentimes people can access land, but no water. Part of the land issue for us is about food sovereignty. It's about dealing with the issue of poverty, of hunger, which we know is growing exponentially in our country day by day. We know that in Eastern Cape, for example, women have killed themselves because of hunger, because of debt. So hunger is at the center of what we do. In dealing with that, we do the food sovereignty work. Food sovereignty, it links to seed work. Seeds that are indigenous seeds that for years and years, our forebearers, foremothers have kept seeds and have given them as a heirloom to their daughters when they get married. So in that sense, to make sure that there's always food wherever they go, even if they go and get married in another country or in another village, so they always have something to put food on the table. Then the second one is to deal with water. The water crisis is looming and it's destroying many communities in that food has become very difficult for them to grow food. So the water issue is a big issue for us. I need not say more. I think all South Africans are very aware of the crisis of water that we face in the country. Be it because of climate, disasters, drought, as we know, but also because of lack of infrastructure. The poor management of our municipalities have led to a failing system that is failing the poor and the marginalized. So for us, climate issues are very much at heart, and we know climate is here to stay. And this is something that we cannot wait until we have resources. We have to act now. Otherwise, we have no future. Otherwise, it impacts on food and food sovereignty. There's a lot of loss and damages that are caused by climate. And livelihood is also lost because of climate catastrophes. So these are some of the very inherent issues for us as the TCOE. Coupled with that is the issue of rural democracy. In rural areas, you have a dual system. You have a system of chiefs or traditional authorities, and you have a system of elected councillors. And these two systems do not speak to each other. They cause a lot of confusion. They undermine women in particular. Women has no rights in terms of land tenure in their own name. Therefore, they work the land and produce food, but they do not have access to land in their own name. So this is because of the dual system that operates, especially in the previously Bantustans, where some of these practices are still upheld.
You've been with TCOE now for 10 years. In that time, how have you seen the work change and the organization grow and respond to the need?
So development, as we know, is not static. It's a process. It's no easy solutions. 10 years might seem very long, but in the life of development, it's not too long. However, I can say that there are some changes in terms of the organization's focus and making its work relevant and cutting edge to meet the realities of today. The issue of climate was not an issue 10 years ago. Today is one of the uppermost issue that the organization has taken up. We had no choice. We had to take it up because it relates to the small-scale farmers and producers that we work with. It impacts the livelihood of the people that we work with. Losses and damages that I've already alluded to are issues that they deal with on a daily basis, be it on drought, be it on floods. They deal with that reality with no assistance from government. So our organization have had to take that up, and we take it up at 2 levels. At the level of finding alternative solutions through our agroecological hubs, which are alternative to dealing with issues that are impacting people on climate. The second part is to deal with advocacy work, where we influence change, where we advocate for change, where we demand from our government to put resources where it's supposed to be. A small-scale farmer doesn't have an insurance. If the floods come, they lose everything. They have to restart from scratch. So this is where we fit in and come in as an organization to come up with agroecological processes that are going to assist them to find alternative solutions in land rehabilitation, in seedlings that we grow from our nurseries, where we supply them with the seedlings to be able to regrow the food and find their livelihoods. So this is some of the things that we do, and we have had to do it because of the reality of our time. And the hunger and poverty levels, and with the high rate of unemployment in this country, there is no other solution. And I think it's a fallacy to think that there is going to be a magic solution to create employment. We want land because we think we can feed ourselves. We can work the land, we can produce. We cannot only depend on what is known as the commercial agriculture, which has a lot of land for wine and other foods that are not nutritious food. So we believe that you don't need a lot of land to be able to feed yourself. We, for example, started a campaign with the Rural Women Assembly, which is part of the TCOE, Rural Women Assembly South Africa, where we say 1 woman, 1 hectare. Give at least 1 hectare of land to 1 woman, she'll be able to feed herself and her family, and even sell whatever she's got. She will be economically viable and be able to fend for her family and beyond. So these are some of the examples that over the years we have pushed for. We are pushing for water. We have not seen yet the results of the water, but we run a water campaign to challenge the status quo, to challenge the fact, the dysfunctionality of the municipalities, where we feel there need to be budgets that are put to be able to assist municipalities to deal with the issues of service provision. And also, we know the infrastructure has collapsed. It hasn't been managed, especially in rural areas. They are left to fend for themselves. So these are some of the issues that we are fighting for, and we are slowly making some gains.
Ngisa, listening to you speak, the work that you do is very much intersectional. And it sounds almost simple. We can address a whole lot of issues if we give women access to land with water. We can address the poverty issue. We can address the unemployment issue. We can address food sovereignty, land. It seems simple. Why are we not getting it right? What do you think it is that we're just not putting the focus on?
I think we live in a time and a moment where we see the increase of budget austerity, budget cuts. That's one aspect. I can say it's not necessarily the only reason why, but we are seeing that as one of the biggest stumbling blocks that is creating the problem. But when it comes to some of the intersectionality issues, is the gender-related issues, especially in rural settings, where you still have a dual system of governance. As I mentioned, you have your traditional authorities and you've got your elected councillor. Therefore, this exposes people to a practice where the practices become corrupt. Because you can either go to the chief will ask you, pay something. Or the councillor, no one wants to take accountability or responsibility in terms of dealing with issues, for example, of land. especially when it comes to women. So there's still discrimination and lack of participation that is allowing women to bring their voice. We do have what they call, the government has a system called integrated development plans or program. For us, it's a program that already comes pre-planned. The people are used to come and rubber stamp. And so for us, we feel that we want a people's development plan. And this is what we educate and build consciousness, political consciousness to the communities we work with, that you have the right to define the people's development plans. So these are it starts from the grassroots, it starts from the bottom, where the government, there are promises made at the time of elections. We're going now for our local elections. There will be many promises made, but nothing comes to fluidity when it comes to time to implement. And therefore, political education, popular education is very critical. And in fact, it's one of the cornerstones of the work of TCOE, including leadership formation, because we need leaders from the communities who can speak truth to power.
Wealth is about more than just numbers. It's about what you're shaping, your ambitions, your priorities, your legacy. That's why Old Mutual Wealth partners with skilled financial planners to bring the expertise of a leading wealth manager to your strategy. They help you make sense of both local and global opportunities, offering clear strategic insight so you can make confident decisions, whether you're building your wealth, protecting it, or shaping your financial future. Take your wealth further.
Talking about speaking truth to power, TCOE has also criticized President Cyril Ramaphosa for not doing enough in combating child hunger, malnutrition, even child deaths due to malnutrition. What would you like to see him and his government doing, given that we are in an election year? What are some of those promises that you'd like to see that's different this time around?
Put your money where your mouth is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think that unless South Africa is brave enough and bold enough, and this government is bold enough to take the question of land and factor it in, because that's the biggest stumbling block for people to be able to leverage their ability to fend for themselves. And also the issues of gender-based violence, which has been realized by our government, by Ramaphosa, that it's a second pandemic in this country. It cannot be a talk show. We don't want paper policies. We want policies that are transformative, that are being felt by the people on the ground. Today, as we sit here, probably every 26 minutes they say statistically a woman is raped and a child is raped. So I don't want to separate the woman and the child, because these days our children are being killed and murdered. So what is the problem? Why can't we put the money where it's supposed to be to protect safety of women and safety of our communities? It's something that has become a norm, that we have to contend with what we have. You either protect yourself and you and your family, or you don't have a state that looks after you.
I want to talk a little bit about your food gardens and the seed sharing and seed saving, because I don't think a lot of people are aware of how this actually comes to bear in the everyday for small-scale farmers. It's a principle of how your organization operates, helping women, smallholder farmers to access land, but also have those seeds to plant. Can you tell us a little bit about what the issue is for someone who doesn't actually understand that seeds are being stolen and commercialized, and what you guys do in order to unlock that? Because you don't only do work in South Africa.
Yes. So seeds are very important. Seeds are our heritage. Seeds are life. Seeds is what produce food, puts food on the table. Today, seeds are being criminalized. If you have indigenous seeds, you are not allowed to share them. Seeds are controlled by huge companies. So in other words, they are not sovereign anymore. They don't belong to us. We are forced to use GMO seeds or hybrid seeds, which are the very same seeds that are for us. They contribute to the climate catastrophes that we see today. So we want to have our own seeds. We have decided to multiply our seeds. We've identified sites and spoken to some of our members. If you have a small plot of land that you are not utilizing, please give it to us so that we can multiply seeds, because that's the way we can prove that we can feed ourselves. We don't just need small packets of seeds, but we want to create seed banks where we can supply and we can feed the nation, and that we can have more seeds that we can share across the region, not only in South Africa. In fact, South Africa has been an outlier for a long time. We've lost a lot of our own food in South Africa. And because we've been an outlier. And therefore, we are reintroducing the multiplication of seeds and getting seeds from other regional countries so that we can begin to claim and reclaim our sources of food through our seed multiplication program.
How successful have your efforts been on that so far? And what has been the response from other partner countries, women in those spaces?
Well, I can tell you other countries are more than advanced than we are. But the response has been overwhelmingly positive. Our women have taken up in terms of this because there's a value addition to seeds. You can sell seeds, you can multiply them, you can produce seedlings. You can, for example, in sunflower seeds, which we got from our fellow partners in Zimbabwe, women have grown some of those, planted those seeds here in South Africa, and they can make oil, and they can make animal feed from it. So it's very important. It's not just the seed itself that's sitting there, but also the value chain that is from a seed that can really extend. So there's a lot of excitement. We've seen already some of the women in Limpopo where they've produced enough seeds, and now from bottles of seeds, they now have bags of seeds.
Who supports your programs?
We are supported by external donors, if you say, but very much the innovation is the innovation of ourselves. We innovate. We find partners that share the same values that can support the work that we do. Of course, the women give of their time because they see the benefit of being part of the movement, and so are the small-scale producers. For example, our livestock farmers. Animal feed is very expensive. To get a bale of grass or whatever when there's drought, it's very expensive. So that's also another attraction that we want to grow as an innovation in our work, to be able to support small-scale farmers who are on livestock. Yeah.
How can South Africans get involved if they're inspired by your work? What can they do?
Join us in our markets. We have a market on a monthly basis here in Mowbray. In fact, one was now this past Saturday, but it's normally the first Saturday of the month. But also nationally, we have these markets that are run by small-scale producers. By buying from them, you are actually helping them to sustain themselves, to create employment for young people or their families that are working on the farms. So it's an important element. But also join TCOE, become a friend of the TCOE, bring whatever skills you have. All those skills matter.
And if you have land with water,
give us the land.
Give us access
to the land.
Yeah.
We are looking for a small farm that we can have here locally, where we can use it as a learning site. We can use it as a site where we grow maximally. We produce more. And it can become a site for a multi-purpose center that we utilize not only for agricultural purposes, but as a learning site, as a site for finding alternative, a site for innovation. Yeah.
What are the next steps for TCOE? What do you hope for your organization for this year?
Well, we hope it continues to succeed in its work and to innovate. We are a learning organization. Learning is very central to what we do. Therefore, that's why we experiment and explore different possibilities. And so TCOE would like to really continue to work on issues of climate. It's a big issue. It's one of the biggest threats to humanity. And therefore, it's something that we have to look into. In fact, this morning I was reading a CV from a young man who wrote to me and saying, I just finished studying. I would like to be involved in water management. And I've done some studies in climate. Is it possible that I can join TCOE? So those are the kind of people we want to join us, to bring innovation, to bring their abilities, to bring their skills. Yes, we know we are in a difficult moment when it comes to resources. Global funding and resources have become less and less. Therefore, human capital and social capital is going to be very critical in the years to come.
I know that you have programs that also support finding justice for farm workers who are exposed to harmful and often illegal pesticides. Can you share with us a little bit on that, on educating your members on their rights, not just with climate justice, but also these harmful pesticides and work practices?
So a lot of the farm workers, which is one of the constituencies that we work with, especially here in the Western Cape and in Eastern Cape, they are exposed because some of them live on farms, some of them work on farms. Some of them have got children who go to school on the farms. So pesticides are being sprayed in the food that we consume. And oftentimes the families and the people who work and live on the farms, they do not have protective clothing. And the spraying of the pesticides impacts the skin. You can develop a skin rash. You can have problems with your chest. We've documented many cases of such, where even children's mental state is also impacted by pesticides. So we've documented these cases, and this is part of the program of, one, campaigning against the use of pesticides. Secondly, the rights of the workers on the farms and those who live on the farms, that they have the right to protective clothing when they spray these pesticides. We hope that the pesticides will be banned. That's part of the campaign. We know that will take long. The wheels of justice take very long. But for now, as an intermediary plan, is to make sure there's education, there's safety measures that are put in place to combat the issues of pesticides.
Lungisa, I want to thank you for sharing your story with us today. Your work reminds us that real transformation and real change doesn't start with big projects and policies. It starts quietly, sometimes just with a conversation, but more importantly with communities coming together and people realizing that they can have and take control of land and food, and that when communities are empowered, they don't just survive, but they actually thrive and can build solutions that can be solutions across multiple sectors and address multiple issues. For listeners, this is a reminder that change is about trust and resilience and giving people tools to shape their own future. If you'd like to support their work, please visit tcoe.org.za.